Hello and welcome to La Course on Tech, coming to you scattered high across the vast alpine valleys of the towering Tarentaise. Is that right, Jeremy? Tarentaise?
Tarentaise.
Thank you. And just a stone's throw across from the Italian border where, well, guess who lives in northern Italy? That's right. Paolo, are you still there? Welcome along to our in-depth coverage of the 2021 Tour de France in association with Peloton magazine and our presenting sponsor Hyperice, keeping this year's teams fresh day after day, which, as I've said before, they need. And this La Course on Tech podcast, along with our Aérogramme listeners, who we say bonjour to as always, comes to you scattered high across the vast alpine valleys of the towering Tarentaise. Jeremy, am I getting that right? Tarentaise?
Yes, that's absolutely spot on.
Thank you, Jezels. And just a stone's throw from the Italian border where, well, guess who lives in northern Italy? That's right, Paolo. My name's OJ Borg, not scattered across the Alps. No, I'm sat in my living room trying not to wake the kids up here in Manchester, United Kingdom. And after a day of kicking back in the laundromat and dining on cheese and then more cheese, I'm joined by the hardened veterans of the press room, Jeremy Whittle. Are you the hardest man in the press room if it came to a fight, Jeremy?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? What about Peter Cossins? Is he hard?
No, it's a sack of spuds. Be down in a second.
Yeah, and I tell you who I wouldn't mess with, Sophie Smith.
You shouldn't, OJ, you shouldn't.
Who, let's just all be honest here, let's have complete disclosure, fell asleep just before we were recording this. Are you now awake, Sophie Smith?
It is a rest day, in my defence.
Oh.
But yes,
rest.
I did.
The thing is, though, I mean, they call it a rest day, and I found on the two Tour de France's that I've done, that on the rest day, if you work for the media, I don't know if it's the same in the press, it was for us doing radio and TV, we had to work harder. It was not a rest day.
No.
Yeah, it's not a rest day. I've been running around all day with laundromat. That was the first, stories, laundromat, press conference. It's, rest in inverted commas.
Yeah, well, you see, the thing is, what you need to do, Sophie, is follow Rob Hales, ex-pro rider, now in the media world. He has a 3-pants rule. I don't know if this would work for you. He has one pair of pants that he's wearing, one pair of pants that he's washed and are drying on the dashboard, and one pair of pants that are dirty.
I thought you were going to say one pair of pants that someone else is wearing for a minute then.
Well, this is Rob Hales we're talking about here, but that work for you, Sophie?
Well, I listened to everyone else this year, didn't I, who was like, Sophie, you always pack too much, so I pack light, thinking that I was coming to summer and wouldn't need more than one pair of jeans. That was wrong. I will never listen to anyone that tells me to pack light ever again.
Yeah. Do you know what? The last podcast we did, which was after just a few days, why did nobody mention Ben O'Connor, Sophie? Why did no one mention him? I mean, if only somebody would have tipped us about the fact that, as we record this, he would be sat second in the GC standings.
I know, it must have been a certain host that just kept banging on about Julian Alaphilippe, and I just got distracted and forgot. No, he's a bit understated, actually. I had a chat with him earlier today in a press conference, of course, after he won Stage 9 in emphatic fashion, and is now the only person within 3 minutes of Tadej Pogačar, sort of a day after we all pretty much said that the Tour was one and done. But he's an understated talent. He's only 25. He only started racing his bike 7 years ago. He decided he'd start racing when he got a bike for his birthday when he was 18. And he's had like 5 wins, so his Tour stage win was his 5th win. But every single one of them has been sort of real quality that has sort of shown that he's a prodigious talent, I guess you could say. And he seems to be sort of just coming into his own with his new team, AG2R. He said his most nervous point during his stage win was actually making a speech at the table at dinner, thanking his teammates in French. But he's a really interesting character. He's very polite. He didn't come through the AIS, Australian Institute of Sport pathway program. He and Richie Porte have previously described that as a bit of a boys' club. So he's gone what some would call the harder way, but what he today describes as the more rewarding way.
So here we go. I'm not going to ask you this, Sophie, so there's no national bias here at all. I'm going to ask Pete, how much is he a chance for actually winning this Tour de France? I mean, he's second on GC as we record this. Who knows what's going to happen on further days? But is he a genuine contender?
He's a contender. Pogačar's just out on his own at the moment, so I think he's a contender for the podium or the second or the third step on the podium. I mean, if he can... I actually spoke to him the morning of his stage win, and he was a bit disconsolate then. He had a really bad crash on the first day. He was one of the guys that went down in that second crash. When he cut his arm open, I think he needed 12 stitches in his arm. So he's been kind of working his way back to form. And his goal was to get into the top 10. And he was saying, well, I'm going to need a miracle to get into the top 10. And he pulled off a miracle. I mean, it was an absolutely astonishing ride. And I guess the thing is now, it's a question of whether he can hold that second place, or at least hold a top 5 place, which I think it was his goal, or that was very much his kind of best case scenario, I suppose, was just to finish in the top 5 before the race started.
Well, you say that. The thing is, though, he could have been, heading into the first rest day, Jeremy, he could have been wearing yellow. What were Ineos doing shutting that down? Because it seemed like Ineos were playing at Movistar with their tactics. No one really totally knew why they were riding and why they didn't just let Pogačar sit on the front and maybe do some of the work. He was on his own at that point.
You mean in the climb to Teen? In the
climb to Teen.
Well, I think what they were trying to do is they were trying to prod Pog to see if he'd react to kind of, a bit of pressure, but they got it really badly wrong. I don't think it was anything about chasing down Ben O'Connor, really, because I don't think, if in all honesty, anybody regards him particularly as a liable overall winner of the Tour. I mean, he's definitely, as Pete said, a podium contender now.
He's doing better than anyone else.
Yeah, but you look at the strength of his team, you look at his pedigree. He was so delighted to have won a stage. He didn't talk big about, now my target is to stay in the top 3 or to finish in the top 5. He was just made up that he'd won a stage. I mean, he talked so eloquently, almost poetically. He talked about his heart feeling light and stuff. It was actually really moving, because he was genuinely kind of totally overwhelmed, more overwhelmed than perhaps most riders are when they win a stage in the Tour, because they think it's their job. But he talked about it with enthusiasm of a young kid, But I think what happened on the climb to Teen was that Geraint Thomas was feeling much better than he had been, because he said that on Sunday he felt like his head was in a bucket. On Saturday he felt like his head was in a bucket. He was resurgent. Carapaz, presumably, it's hard to contain Carapaz. I don't know if tactically he's always that sharp. Sometimes I'm criticising the Grand Tour winner's tactics here, but anyway, I think they were just trying to test Pogačar a bit, and it backfired, didn't it? Because Carapaz tried to attack, and then Pogačar just snuffed it out and rode away from them. So it was 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Can I just spring to Ineos's defence here, because I don't think they were trying to upset Pogačar at all. I think. I wouldn't say they've given up on the yellow jersey, but I think they were actually trying to get rid of a few of Carapaz's rivals for the podium or for a top 5 finish or whatever. I mean, I guess they're still aiming for the podium with him. And they kind of did that in a way. I mean, they shook out David Gaudu, they shook out Wilco Kelderman. I mean, I think they realised that Pogačar's just in a completely different league to everybody and can just kind of follow what's going on without it really needing any teammates. So I don't think they were that bad in their tactics, but I mean,
yeah, but far be it for me to debate with you, Peter. But don't you think that why did Carapaz go then? I mean, that was just and then he lost more time because he attacked.
If I agree with you on the fact that he's very. I mean, he's very impulsive. I mean, he's just got that desire, which a lot of riders have, to be aggressive, I suppose. It's that more than anything. We've seen it all the way through the race with Alaphilippe. We've seen it with Van der Poel.
We've seen it with Pogačar as well. The thing is, though, the one thing we've seen, I mean, we saw Alaphilippe on stage 1. We saw Mathieu van der Poel do it on a couple of stages. Nobody has even got close to Pogačar. He has, just like, as we talk on the ride up to Teen, Carapaz attacked him, and he just rode away from him. And he put whatever it was over a couple of kilometres into Ben O'Connor. He put a couple of minutes into him.
And looked like he did it without breathing as well. There was a point where Ben O'Connor was sort of, like virtual yellow jersey, and sort of Pogačar just almost like sat up, took his rain jacket off, gave it to the moto, smiled, and then went poosh.
Jeremy, I was going to ask you, I was going to talk to you about the crashes, the abandons, the weather. I mean, it's been an exciting first week, but realistically, almost so much has happened in this first week of the Tour that there's too much to talk about. So let's talk about Pogačar. When was the last time you saw a performance as dominant as this?
I would say Marco Pantani. That's what I immediately thought of. And then who won the Giro and the Tour in 1998. And then I was thinking about Bjarne Riis in 1996 on Hautacam, and those are not good comparisons, and they're not good memories. Björn Ries famously rode up to the summit in Haute-Cam in the Pyrenees, looking like, he was kind of, I don't know, watching TV almost, and looked at his rivals, saw how slowly they were going, just accelerated away and dropped them all and basically sealed victory in the Tour. Those are not good comparisons because both of those riders were tainted by doping scandals. Ries in particular, who had subsequently doped for all of his career. At the same time, I think that we need to not be kind of... I've got a slight sniff of a witch hunt growing about Tadej Pogačar. I've written in the past myself about concerns about the people around him who don't have the most illustrious of track records. In fact, they have a downright seedy track record. His team manager, his team doctor, and one of his sports directors as well. That doesn't mean that the 22-year-old buys into all of that. It doesn't mean that he buys into their past. So we have to wait and see. I think, I understand why people are concerned, and obviously we have a terrible past that we live with in cycling where suspicions have all too often been confirmed. I think it's too early to condemn him as an individual, but I understand totally where people are coming from when they look at the people around him.
Well, if you look at Twitter, it seems to be in two camps at the moment with his performances. Those who are hailing him as the greatest rider of a generation, which is a fair point. What we've seen so far is amazing. And then there is a seedier, more aggressive, as you say, Jeremy, witch hunt going on with people not believing about his performance. And I would say it's probably to do with the age of the person tweeting the messages. Anyone who's older, who maybe was around during the Pantani and the Armstrong years, is less believing of it and downright aggressive in the way they're talking about his performances. And those who are younger, who maybe weren't into cycling during those days and are new to the sport, maybe through Mathieu van der Poel and people like that, are not believing it. What is the talk, Sophie, in the press room with his performances? And did anybody go, or was anybody part of his press conference, which went on earlier on the rest day?
I wasn't part of it. No, all the press conferences sort of fell at the same time today. But I have read some of what was said, and the angle that we're talking about now was put forward to him as it was in the press conference at the end of stage 9. But I think he either didn't hear the journalist asked it properly or didn't interpret it correctly. But he's come back and quoted the number of times he's been tested this race. Yesterday, the day before, and that's been his response. It's this is my. Is
that the right response? I saw a social media commentator saying it was the worst response you can give, which is "I've never failed a test."
Yeah, well, of course that's what Armstrong said. And I mean, what else do you say? Like he can say he's not. He can say yes. He can say no. Either he can say no, or he can say I've never tested positive. Either way, these questions are going to come. And it's funny, this is like not a shade on what Pete and Jeremy have done. This is my 9th tour. And the first tour I did, doping questions were part and parcel of press conferences. They were as common as asking, like, how are you feeling today? Or what's your aim for the stage? And it was sort of at that period where the second rest day in particular, someone would always go positive. But pretty much since then, it actually seemed to have, with the exception of some comments that were thrown at Chris Froome there in like the mid-2000s, I guess, it kind of petered out, whereas this is the first tour I've come back to and these questions have come back up. But it's one of those things, it's like, I'm going to sit on the fence with this one, but it's like every good performance in cycling, because of the past we've had, this question is always going to come up, I think. It's not in any other sport. You don't question Cristiano Ronaldo or Rafael Nadal. I think it's because of our sport that people become suspicious. But on the other hand, you have a lot of riders in the peloton who are absolutely have legs screaming after 9 stages and saying that they're doing personal best performances and can't keep up with the pace.
Well, that's the other thing, isn't it? Because some of his peers now are not speaking out, but some of his peers are making comments. Enric Mas, who said that Pogačar rode past him like he didn't exist. Thomas de Gent has also made some comments as well about how he's been putting out some of his best ever figures in terms of power, and it feels like he's standing still in comparison with Pogačar as well. And I think that it's that thing that on Saturday he was so superior that he kind of made the rest of the peloton look a bit silly. And I think when you do that, that's kind of like, that's not going to shut people up. That's almost going to encourage the comment and encourage the speculation.
Yeah, but equally, there's nothing he can do there, is there? I mean, that's sort of innocent until proven guilty. I mean, he could just be a really prodigious talent, and it's superbly unfair that, you know, he's copying this criticism.
And this is the problem. This is the problem right here, Pete, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, in listening to Jeremy comparing him to Rees and Pantani, I mean, I find that unfair. I mean, I didn't really see Eddie Merckx ride at all. I mean, I've seen videos and footage, and I can remember Bernardino riding in quite a similar way to Pogačar in all kinds of terrain, in the way that we've seen Pogačar do in the first half of the Tour de France. And it kind of almost seems like that's a better comparison, really, that he's got that kind of all-round ability, and I guess he's so phenomenal. I mean, it could just be that he is in that league in that group of very small, great Grand Tour riders that's maybe only got 4 or 5 riders in it. Fausto Coppi, Merckx, Eno, maybe 1 or 2 others, and he might be the next one. I mean, at the moment, I'm cynical as well because I've seen so much in the past, but until we've got some evidence that Pogačar's doing something wrong, and there are some dodgy people around him, but there's nothing to say that Pogačar's done anything wrong, then I think everybody's just got to take his word about it, basically.
What's the feeling towards him in France?
I think people I think that again, there's 2 sides to it. There's a lot of whispering going on amongst French teams and riders. It's kind of not really. It's kind of half reported, and you see lots of stuff on Twitter, and nothing's really said out in the open. I mean, I think people are accepting him. I'm not seeing the same kind of antagonism that we saw directed at Sky and specifically at Chris Froome when he was at his peak. People seem to be much more accepting. There's a lot of Slovenian support on the race, which has been good to see. At the moment, I don't think people are. I think people are convinced by him. I don't think I think that they just see him as a phenomenal talent, and there's no evidence for them to believe otherwise at the moment.
Well, let's do that then. We've done the sceptical, but we've tackled that part of the Pogačar question. Let's take it on the other side of it now. How dominant, Pete, is this performance? How amazing you look from the team that's around him, which isn't the best UAE Emirates team around. How brilliant is this performance? I
think it's just astonishing. He never seems to be in trouble. I mean, I'm going to make a really bad comparison now, having said what I have just said, but in the way that he just manages to stay out of trouble, he reminds me of Lance Armstrong. I mean, we're going to talk about riders crashing off all over the place in this race, but Pogačar hasn't. He doesn't. He doesn't seem to crash at all. He seems to stay on his bike. He just seems to have, I don't know, almost like an extraordinary talent to see what's going to happen and react to it before it happens. And allied to that, he's got extraordinary ability as well. I mean, we saw him in the time trial at Laval, just kind of not beating everybody by street, but certainly giving him quite a beating. And in the mountains, he's just absolutely astonishing to watch. Like Sophie says, it doesn't look like he's really trying a lot of the time. But I mean, when he was going up the Col de Colombier, and I've ridden up there, I mean, it's a hard climb. It's steep. It's like 9% for 7 or 8 kilometres. He was in the big ring pretty much all the way. And that's just astonishing to see. I mean, he is phenomenal.
He is. It's amazing to watch. I mean, Sophie, should we all go home? Is the second tour in the bag for him?
Oh, I mean, that was what we all were saying before stage 9. But, you know, then the GC got a bit of a shake-up. I think this tour, you know, I don't think anyone would have thought that the sprint field would be decimated, or Roglic would be out, or Thomas would be as injured as he is. So he certainly, though, I know a lot of teams, even after that, or a lot of teams, I should say, Jumbo-Visma, even after the first time trial, were A, knew they would lose time to him going in, and B, afterwards knew that they'd have to put, before he had what some might now call an unassailable lead, would have to put more than a minute into him before the penultimate time trial. But I think picking up on what Pete just said then about him also staying out of trouble this first week, I think that's also a testament to how he's racing as well, when you consider that, you know, there's a lot of people at the moment saying there's no respect among riders in the peloton. They're pushing each other, they're punching each other. they're knowing that they're going to finishes that are dangerous and not neutralising them during the race. So I think the fact that he's had the foresight, or his team has had the foresight, he's getting more and more perturbed about people saying that he has a weak team, to stay out of trouble like that, I think is sort of a testament to, I'm going to say, his maturity as well. Like, he's 22, he's an absolute kid without sounding patronising, but I asked him in the press conference the other day about Ben O'Connor and whether he considered him a serious threat to GC. And he was very respectful of him, but he also spoke about O'Connor like he was a kid. He was like, oh, he's a really talented rider. And
how old's Ben O'Connor?
Pogačar's 3 years younger than Ben O'Connor. So I think that, more than anything else he said this week, the fact that he has stayed out of trouble and the fact that he's sitting there very cool, not only very cool, calm and collected on the road, but very sort of in command, and he's 22, says a lot, probably more to me actually than his performances on the road at the moment.
Time to talk now about our presenting sponsor. I'm going to do that whilst using their product, because I have one and it's amazing, and I think it'd be a nice way to do it as I get my legs fresh again, because I did do a session on the turbo earlier. And now, if you've ever wondered how the Tour de France riders stay fresh and keep pushing day after day, there's the hot spot. They recover with Hyperice's top recovery tech, including the Normatec 2.0 recovery systems after every stage. Normatec technology uses dynamic, compression to increase circulation to the legs, flush out muscle soreness, and helps riders revive themselves quickly. Take your endurance to the next level like a pro. Hyperice technology, including the Normatec 2.0, is available at trekbikes.com. Click the Hyperice banner on our homepage, which is pelotonmagazine.com, to claim a special Tour de France offer. So earlier today, Jeremy, you sat in on a Zoom call with Geraint Thomas, the former leader of the Ineos Grenadiers team. Or is he still the leader? What is his status now within that team, Jeremy?
I guess he's still leader, but he's just like
a figurehead now.
The race, figurehead. Well, figurehead, I guess. But as you say, he's the de facto leader, but he's been usurped by his teammate.
By Carapaz, yeah. He's been having a pretty rough time of it. I mean, he came in here looking for a second Tour de France. He's fallen. He's crashed a couple of times. He's dislocated his shoulder. As you said earlier on, his head was in a bucket for a day. What was he like on the Zoom call?
He was in quite good spirits, actually. I was quite surprised. He might even say, I've decided enough's enough, because it's the rest day, which is kind of a traditional spot for riders who are struggling to say, I'm going to go home and prepare for the Vuelta or the World Champions or whichever race they want to prepare for. He didn't. He actually talked up with the benefits of staying in the Tour, because he said, dubious perhaps, but he said that he could use it as a kind of preparatory race for the Olympics, because he can have easier days and days when he goes deep. He's got, physio, massage, a chef, all the equipment and technological support all around him. So he said in some ways he's better off doing that, staying in the Tour and just, seeing if he can do a job for the team, than he is leaving. And he said his shoulder was much better. But we talked a bit about how much he'd suffered, and he said, I always go deep, whether it's riding the Tour de France or going out on the piss.
Which is a great statement. So let's hear from Geraint Thomas.
If I hadn't bounced back as I did yesterday, I think it'd be more of a discussion, I guess. But it's the Tour. It's the biggest bike race in the world, and I didn't want to just leave. But at the same time, it's the whole Olympics thing and weighing up what's best. And to be honest, I think it's 6 and 2 3s, I guess, when it comes to staying here. Got massage, physio, obviously chef, everything's looked after. Preparation wise, I can go easy some days, can go deeper others. I think training wise, I think that's ideal. The only thing is the quick turnaround from traveling out there, basically. But to be honest, personally, it was good just for the head to have a better day yesterday, because stage 8, my head was in a bucket. To be honest, it was tough to take, and to bounce back as I did was pleasing. I think I've said before, it's more getting through those early days just took a lot more out of me than it normally would, obviously. So say a normal stage takes, 50% effort, whereas those stages take more 80%. So it's kind of like just that cumulative effect of just like digging in, which, wears you out as well, because then, after the stage, you're seeing the physio, you're seeing massage, that's all helping with the injuries, but it's taking out time just lying on your bed and switching off and, chatting to family or whatever, where, you're doing loads of extra stuff around it. So, yeah, that's the tiring part as well. But as far as the injuries go, shoulder is feeling good. Like, we're strapping it up every day, and it's not really painful now, to be honest. And my hip was a little sore, but it's like once you get racing, you kind of warm up and that's fine as well. So it's just dealing with the fatigue and, racing the Tour. With this injury, it has taken me a while to sort of get going. Like I did a little warm up that morning, but it was still just like, ballistic, and the way the race just continued, we didn't come back. So I think just fight and go deep with everything, whether that's a bike race or out on the piss or anything, I think that's just the way I am. And I'm not one to sort of just give up easily, really. And if there's ever a chance you can sort of maybe get better, like that's the reason I started yesterday. It's like, to be honest, starting the stage, I thought this is just going to be the same as the day before. You just fight and you give it everything, and then suddenly you can just turn it around and you can come out of it and you can come out better. And so that was the main reason for it. After stage 8, it was definitely one thing going around in my head, like what is best to do, whether it's go home, rest, recover, Olympics, maybe Vuelta, all sorts, all different scenarios, weighing everything up. But then yesterday sort of changed all that again, really. But yeah, for me, I'd find it hard to focus on the Vuelta now. I've put so much into getting ready for here, and it's like all that mental sort of energy and is almost at zero, by the time I get to that TT and the Olympics. My mind's going to be completely sort of spent because I've put so much into it. So to then, knuckle down for another, so it'd only be 2 weeks, but then you got 3 weeks of hard racing, and it's more time away from family and stuff as well, and it would take a lot to get my head around. Yeah, at the moment, just focusing on, as I said, day by day here, really, and hopefully just improving all the time. And as I say, opportunities, hopefully feel like I can go for a stage and, do some good work for Billy as well. I'd like to sort of, Paris Olympics would be a nice sort of final big goal. So maybe three more years. So yeah, I certainly need a couple more tours in there. Although I won't miss the first week of the tour, I'll definitely say that. Jeepers.
Geraint Thomas there. Now, on Wednesday this week, we have the long-awaited return to Mont Ventoux. You can hear about that very unique climb in our Ventoux special podcast, available to Aérogramme listeners. Jeremy, I know you're very excited about the Ventoux, aren't you?
I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah, I've been looking at the weather as well, though, and it looks like it might be a bit mixed. I think it could be sunshine and showers that day, which is quite unusual, and it's not even going to be that hot. So it actually might be a more dynamic stage than maybe we thought. And also, if it does rain, the final descent, which is really breakneck, very steep, extremely quick, and has a finish line basically at the bottom of a 25-kilometre, 60-mile-an-hour downhill ride. That's going to be interesting.
Interesting is one word you could use. One rider competing in the Tour, or should I say the Alt Tour, has already been up and down the Giant Provence in his quest to ride the whole route, plus all the transfers unsupported and to get to Paris before his peers in the Tour peloton. That is Lachlan Morton of the EF Nippo team, who's part road racer, part adventure racer, what I'd like to call a jazz cyclist, freeform, improvising as he goes, and then sleeping on the roadside, like all jazzers. He's currently on track to beat the peloton to Paris by quite a way. I caught up with him as he stopped somewhere in the Rhone Valley to catch his breath.
Mind is good. My body's pretty good. My legs feel fine. A few little niggles and whatever with my feet, mainly. But no, I can't complain. I'm happy.
You say niggles with your feet. Is that because you've had to put cycling shoes on? I saw you do a whole load of days in flip-flops.
Yeah, I'm back in the flip-flops now. Mainly because... Initially, it was because I had a sore knee, and I was like riding, thinking, "How am I going to fix this?" And so I stopped and bought I had to buy a bike from a supermarket to get some pedals, and then I got the pedals and started ripping in the flip flops, and that helped the knee.
I do have a question. What's happened to the bike? If you bought a bike just for the pedals, where's the bike?
I gave it away.
Who got the bike? Who was lucky enough to get the bike?
I gave it away to campsite.
So I've got the total distance so far via the alttour.ef.com website. It's 3,049 kilometres out of 5,510. Am I behind where you're actually at? Because I think you're probably further on than that, aren't you?
I don't know. It sounds about right. I haven't been keeping track. To be honest, I just sort of just push each day not as far as I can, but try and push on each day as much as I feel good doing, knowing that I can still unwind for a few hours at the end of the day and have a decent sleep, and that's kind of the way I'm going about it. I'm not big on counting the Ks and working out how far to go, just because I know mentally how that can sort of start to play on you.
Well, here's the question then, and I know there's all sorts of types of fun. There's type 2, they call it, the fun you have when you stop doing something. Are you enjoying this?
Yeah, loving it. This is like a dream scenario for me, to be able to do something like this and call it work, Obviously, it's incredibly difficult every day. But if you didn't enjoy it, it would be impossible. So I enjoy the whole process of each day I'm brought to my limit in one way or another, and then having to just deal with that. Every day you just something else crops up that you didn't think was going to happen, or something you feel worse than you thought. Just something happens that you're okay, I'm going to have to deal with this. And doing that on a daily basis, I enjoy that. As well as the fact that I'm outside riding my bike all day, which for me is the nicest thing I could do. So, no, I do genuinely enjoy it. It doesn't mean I'm always smiling and laughing and having a good time. A lot of it's just hard work. But there's something in that I enjoy.
Is it more enjoyable than riding the actual tour that's going on right now?
I've never ridden the tour, so I can't say, but it's definitely, for me, it's more enjoyable than riding a Grand Tour. It's just it's a crazy experience, you meet so many different people, you see so much more than you do, from inside the peloton and inside the team bus and inside the hotel. So it's almost incomparable, the two experiences.
I followed, like a lot of people, I followed you do the GB Divide. Thought it was amazing. I thought it was a great film that went with it. I was a dot watcher for the entirety of it. You got quite emotional towards the end of that. Do you think that's coming here?
Yeah, for sure. I've already got emotional a few days. It's just what happens when you're close to your limit, and you can't control everything that's going on. You're super vulnerable. Emotions come up. I haven't had a full breakdown yet, but I've been pretty close. For sure, been pretty close.
I was reading the blog entry for your day on Ventoux. That seemed like a day and a half. For people who haven't read that or don't know what happened, just talk us through your day on Ventoux.
Yesterday, I don't know. For some reason, I had a day before where it rained a whole bunch, maybe 4 or 5 hours, and then we got to camp and I set up and dried everything, found a washing machine, washed everything, and it was okay, bad weather's behind me. I felt we're headed south. We're gonna be nothing but smooth sailing now. And then within 2 hours when I started, it was just raining, full gas, and it just kept raining and raining. And then I got my first flat, and I knew I only had one tube left. And I was okay, this is going to be a problem. And it was a Sunday in France, so all the bike shops were closed. And then sure enough, 20k down the road, another flat. So I cut the hole out of the tube and tied it, and then that held, and then that went flat. And I tried to double tie it, but it wouldn't hold. And then in the end, I patched one other tube I'd held onto that I'd punctured a few days ago. And I remembered I had a mattress repair kit for my inflatable, and I used that to patch the tube. And I was sure it was going to fail. And I was this is my last ditch. And managed to get going, and then like after all this, I still had to do like Ventoux, and like it felt like once, and then I managed to find a bike shop just at the bottom of Ventoux, and I got 2 tubes, and then it made it feel like I was like, oh, Ventoux's easy now. You know, I just had so much relief that like I was like, okay, I'm out of the woods here. Even though I still had to get up over Ventoux and then down and set up camp, like that was easy. It was like it was a monster day.
Well, I think you're possibly the only person on Earth who's ever got to the bottom of Ventoux kilometre 0 and gone, okay, easy bit now. Now I've got through all the bumps and stuff.
Yeah, I was like, I'll just get up over this thing. It'll be too easy.
I read all the marketing spiel at the start of this. I mean, and I read why you're doing it, and it's harking back to the original days of the tour when it was the big long days and self-supported. Now you're a week in, you're over half of the distance. Is the reasoning in your mind still the same?
Yeah, totally. It's like, it's funny to like do an event, I guess, that's so different but so similar right at the same time. It parallels the tour. I definitely have like a new appreciation for the race, like having seen what it does for the communities and how excited people get about having like a bike event. It's really like cemented like the purpose of professional sport and cycling in my head. And also just the operation that the ASO has is like wild to me, like to see the logistics of it from the roadside, I guess. But yeah, I think like the goal, I mean the purpose is still the same. I think like what I'm finding out is that like I think the original tour and cycling, you know, in those days is like very romanticized, and the reality is it's pretty grim. You know, like it's dirty, it's grimy, it's like long days, a lot of pain, and yeah, it's fun to experience that and get a feel for a small bit of what it's like. I mean, I have an appreciation now for how much more difficult it would have been even than what I'm doing, you know, because I've got like a GPS and I've got like a carbon bike and the roads are sealed, you know, so it almost creates this idea in my head of like it's even more amazing than what I thought it was.
Well, Lachlan, it's great to chat to you. Where are you camped right now? Because I was expecting you to be in some sort of beautiful scenic campsite with a babbling brook, and it sounds like you're in a fairground.
Yeah, there's a bullfighting arena next door.
Wow.
It's just a small town, maybe 30, 40 k's past Nîmes. And yeah, it's just pretty happening little place.
So we'll have some beers then, yeah?
Yeah, I managed to find a bottle of cider. So yeah, I'm just sucking back on that, and I've got a melon and some prosciutto. It's basically it's good living tonight, that's for sure.
And just on the distance, I said before, 3,049 kilometres of the 5,010 kilometre goal. You're well ahead of the actual tour. I mean, your whole challenge is to beat the tour into Paris. I mean, at this rate, you're going to have been in Paris about a few days and set up a cafe by the time they make it there.
Yeah, I know how much can go wrong with these things. So, you could lose a day very quickly, like with something physical, something mechanical, something mental, you know. It can go sideways very quickly. So my tactic in these sort of events, or these long ultra stuff, I guess you call it, is always to like, when you feel good, you should push hard and make the most of it, because the bad moment's always coming. So at the moment I feel good, so I'm trying to push hard, and brace for impact whenever that bad moment really comes.
Well, listen, I think what you're doing is inspirational, and I can see in 2022 this being an actual race. Has anyone mentioned that to you, the Alt Tour being a race?
I don't know. No one's mentioned it. I guess so. Could be a thing.
Stick the challenge down. And just as well, I want to mention this at the end. You are, with EF and Rafa, you are raising money to buy bicycles for World Bicycle Relief. I've just checked the amount now, 1,674 bikes raised so far. What is the target for by the time you get to the end?
As many as possible. again, I'm not someone who likes to focus on a number. I think like if people feel inspired by it and they're in a position to give, then they should, because I mean, from a personal point of view, bikes are the nicest thing you can have in your life. And if you can help give someone else that experience, then like what nicer thing is there, So yeah, if you're in a position to, should give some money.
And if you want to do that, alttour.ef.com, you can donate via the link there. Lachlan, thank you so much. I'll leave you to your melon, your ham, and your cider. Have a great night and good luck for the rest of it.
Cheers, mate.
Lachlan Morton there talking about the remarkable challenge he has set himself, and I'm glad he's got some cider and some fruit. Now, with so many big names already gone from this year's race, some new stars are emerging, such as Ben O'Connor, who we talked about before. There's also the usual Tour human drama. I think all of us were very touched by Nick, and I'm going to get the surname wrong. Pete, give me the surname, the pronunciation.
I think it's Lamini, that's how they pronounce it, but okay. I could be wrong.
Well, we'll go with that. I trust you more than me. Of the Quebecer team, who finished outside the time limit on Sunday's stage to Teen after being dropped and crashing, but stuck to it to finish the stage because he wanted to honour the Tour. Pete, where does this rank among those special moments in the recent history of the race?
I think it is a special moment. I think this race has had quite a few of them, actually. I mean, we had Julian Alaphilippe, who's winning on the first day, taking the yellow jersey just after just a couple of weeks after his first son had been born, or his first child had been born. We had obviously Mathieu van der Poel taking the yellow jersey and kind of being very overcome by the fact that his grandfather Raymond Poulidor never wore it and never got to see van der Poel wear it either. And I mean, we seem to have had kind of tears and all kinds of drama all the way through. And this was kind of another case. I mean, not tears for the right reason. I mean, I didn't want to see Nick Lamini leave the Tour de France, because listening to him in the mix zone each day, just kind of very eloquent, very interesting to hear what he had to say about his upbringing in a township just outside Cape Town, and his road to the pro peloton. And I mean, it was just staggering what he did. I mean, he crashed early on in the stage, got dropped by the bunch, and just kind of fell further and further back, and ended up finishing, I think, about an hour and 20 minutes after Ben O'Connor had won the stage. So like 40 minutes or more than 40 minutes outside the time limit. But with just wanting to finish, I mean, it was an astonishing ride, and I think everybody was quite moved by it.
I think they were, and for good reasons too. And that brings us pretty much to the end of this podcast. Thank you to Jeremy. Thank you to Pete. Sophie, you can go back to bed.
Thank you.
Well, as the convoy heads south towards Mont Ventoux, a 22-year-old kid, uncontainable in the Alps, is looking unbeatable. Tadej Pogačar will soon have the Pyrenees in his sights, and before we know it, the stages will be running out for his rivals to make up for their lost amazing amounts of time they've got to do. They think it's all to play for, but already after the first rest day, some people think it's all over. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure you keep in touch. Send your thoughts and questions via Peloton's social media channels, or why not slip into our DMs. Check out all the regular writings on LaCourseOnTech.com. And as always, thank you to our presenting sponsor, Hyperice. Until next time, cue the musica.
Via, via, vieni via di qui. Niente più ti lega a questi luoghi, neanche questi fiori azzurri. Via, via.